Thanks, Jordan, for joining us for this chat. Let me just do a quick intro before giving you the floor. Jordan grew up in Brazil and then in 2008 moved to Germany, then Netherlands, and then finally Switzerland. So he's currently living in Zurich, nearby, not too far from where I'm living, actually. He has a PhD in computer science. He worked in a billion of different roles. He was a researcher. Then I'm looking at your LinkedIn. It says scientific software engineer. I'm curious what does that mean? Then you were a technical consultant. Then finally in 2018 you joined Google as a sales engineer and moved to program management in 2021, so 2021, and you're still a program manager, right? So I think you have a quite interesting career path. A lot of the people usually in the live ask how they can start being program managers, and I think that your career might be very interesting for the majority of the people here. This is the one of the reasons why I invited Jordan. I think he has a very unique career path, and it's very interesting his approach to program management. So I already have a few questions I prepared, as I said. Before getting into the content, Jordan is speaking in his own capacity and not on behalf of Google, right? So despite the fact he's employed by Google, he's not speaking on behalf of Google. He's just bringing his opinions here. There is we're not going to have any discussion about Google specifically or discussing any confidential information. We're just going to discuss some public information. Of course, we will ask a lot of things about Google to Jordan, but he's not allowed by me to say anything that is not public information. I don't want him to get in trouble. So my Jordan, do you want to say anything, or you want to correct anything I said? Did I
No,
say
no,
anything wrong?
everything is super accurate. Thank you for inviting me and receiving me here. Is really nice. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to so many people here, reach out and share a little bit of my career journey, because like orientation of career is not the easiest path. So I think it's nice if when people can exchange a lot and give insights to others. I sometimes receive insights from other folks just because I want to learn more as well. So everything you said, thanks also for reminding me. Just reiterating, I'm speaking on my own private capacity, my ideas, and as Marco said, not on behalf of Google. And yeah, that's it.
Cool. Cool. So my first question is, I see your current role is program manager web crawling at Google.
Mhm.
Can you tell us more? What does web crawling mean? What is your team doing?
Yeah. A lot of people ask that as well, and it's a very interesting and funny topic to go about. I don't know for the audience here if people are used to the term of web crawling per se or crawling in general, data crawling. There are so many synonyms, but it's basically when we have our systems or robots or spiders. There are different terms, but they go out into the web and they start, trying to read and understand data. So that's what I mean in general about web crawling, and that's we are going to find in my LinkedIn as well. But specifically on web crawling, there is always like the purpose. Why am I getting such amount of information, right? And I work with a very specific bot of Google, the Google shopper bot, right? And not shopper, the store bot. And the Google store bot has the purpose of actually help merchants that come to Google to advertise their products, to put their product in Google, and to be able to have their products available into the platform for their users. So I work specifically with this kind of cases, and we do the crawling because we want to enhance the user experience in Google. We want to understand better you as a merchant, you as somebody that is working on the retail space, and you want to sell your products, so you would come to us, to Google, and you would actually put your offerings there. You put your products, but then we go on your web page automatically also to check the information, to verify that what you provided to Google through the Merchant Center, for example, is accurate, is up to date. Maybe if you are in peak seasons and you are selling a lot, let's say one of your products, like a USB charger, you are selling so much, then in few seconds it can be that, for example, your USB charger can be, I don't know, not available anymore. So maybe you want to help of somebody that ends up looking at your page and knowing a little bit about the updated state. So we take that information and we use to help you, right? This enhances the user experience of other users, other people that are coming to Google to search for your products, and also increase the number of who come from Google to your websites. So the crawling of the teams that I work with, they are focused on this kind of environments. Maybe later I can also share more documentation online if you're curious to understand how some of these things go. There's some public documentation that is really self-explanatory, and it's really interesting in case you want to leverage Google as a platform. So this is a little bit how I would describe the crawling part.
Uh, but so just to confirm my understanding, uh, is it correct to say that your team is only, I mean, take it only, right? Responsible for the shopping tab we see on, for the crawling of the information that are shown on the shopping tab on Google. You're not collecting any other information. Is that correct?
Not only on the shopping tab. So let's say a retailer can come to the merchant center, and there are different places in which the products can maybe show up. It's not specifically there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I see. I see. So, okay, I feel now I understand what your team is doing. But maybe I mean, I have some knowledge of Google, so I might be not. If anyone else has question about the team, feel free to ask.
Yeah.
Uh, but let's focus on the program management side, right?
Mhm.
What is your role and responsibility as a program manager in that team?
Yeah. So as a program manager, you always have the role into you have to focus on delivery, right? So you have to support your teams to deliver faster, to focus, to be more structured. So you have to come up with processes. You have to come up with ideas even, and you have to come up with maybe tooling or means that will allow them to do that. And this is basically what I do every day. It's like, let me try to understand how my team can actually deliver their assets in time, or how are we going to, what is the process that we are going to use and implement to react to an external event, how are we going to fix some stuff. So I always have this kind of a consideration process in tech, right? But it's really process driven. And something that I think for all IT um, companies, there is a careful intent in something that we would call scalability, right? So we want to scale engineering operation, or engineering in general. We want to scale everything, like minimum input, maximum output. How can I facilitate and support this kind of a goal, right? So that's what I would summarize my work as a PGM.
Hmm.
So very driven to process, very driven to scalability, automation, and in certain extent, some sort of servant leadership, in the sense that I really want to make the life of others, of my teams, better.
Hmm. Interesting. I'm curious. Can you? I like numbers. People here on the live knows that I love numbers. So can help me understand, quantify the size of your scope, right? How many people are in your direct team? How many people are in the partner team? I guess you're working with multiple teams, right? Just order of magnitude. It doesn't have to be the exact number, right? Is we're speaking about 10, 100,000, I don't know, engineers and I guess product managers and other program managers as well, right?
Hmm. Yes. So it's very difficult to quantify precisely because, as you know, Marco, in Google, we tend to work horizontally. So I think looking at my previous lives, I worked in few companies in which the structures they were somehow a little bit siloed. So there was really the team. You had your engineering team. People would work together. That is like really clustered, and people would stick together. And that's like you could measure easily, and you could count people raise their hands maybe in dailies. It would be even easy to buy croissants for everybody because it's really predictable.
Yeah.
But right
Uh,
now,
can I interrupt you?
yeah,
Uh, the discussion about using a croissant and other stuff to just bribe people came up multiple times. It seems is a common program management superpower here. But go ahead.
right, yes, exactly, whatever it is. um, Better the croissants, or the croissants, or I forgot the name, in Italy, because then there is a large variety with cream, with nocciola, with pistachio, with everything that you can imagine. But anyways, let's close that parenthesis. And with us, it's really cross functional. So I work with several people that are not just engineers. There are some people that are program managers. There's me, some people that are product managers, some people that are analysts. There are a lot of roles. So it's very difficult to even constrain and put something here. But it's not; those are not larger teams, so not really huge.
Okay, thanks. Let let me ask you about your career path, right?
Hmm.
You started at Google as a sales engineer, right? In the
Hmm.
cloud product area.
Yeah.
Then you move to a program management in a completely different area, right? So you
Hmm.
change role, and at the same time you also change team.
Hmm.
Okay, why? Why
Yes.
did you make such a move?
Yes, yeah. Okay. I'll actually go a little bit um come take few steps back, because it's very interesting what you said. And some folks working here with cloud, I don't know if everybody here that is joining today works in that environment, but it seems that there are several job titles for folks working with exactly the same thing. So you can call nowadays sales engineers, you can call customer engineers, you can call solution architects. There is a big variety of names, but basically, in my understanding, what most of them do is actually work on our architectures, right? That are mainly cloud driven to help customers achieve like their best. And I just want to give this disclaimer because I would like to avoid that maybe some terms they might imply something different, and maybe some people that are not working the area also get with what I mean. And working in this capacity in cloud, it was really beautiful. It was nice. I liked it. It was a great experience, especially because cloud nowadays. Before cloud, I think it was a little bit more infrastructure based. Several years ago, people were looking like, how can I migrate everything, my workload on prem, and now how can I bring my workload to the cloud? And now there are several themes and topics within cloud. There are the folks that are working just with infrastructure, maybe some folks just working with security and networking, some folks working with analytics, ML, AI, there are different variations because there are a lot of services there. So I really appreciate of working in this kind of environment because it was an every day a different crash course for me, hearing colleagues talking about, I don't know, analytics processes, hearing other colleagues talking about how to set up Kubernetes in the cloud, hearing like people who had experience in Kafka and now they are coming back and they are saying, oh, Kafka was great to get to Google Cloud. So great experience. In Google Cloud, in cloud in general, the you work with several customers, so you are extremely customer centric oriented, and you want the success of the customer. You learn a lot because you see a variety of customers coming with different classes of problems to you, saying like, I have this issue. It's not just migrate workload. Maybe it's app modernization. Maybe it's something regarding, I want to have more insights about my data. So you always jump in when more or less the classes of the problems or the problem themselves, they are there available. And I thought to myself, there is in the cloud environment, there is the problem is there, and there are a lot of project management activities as well. You have to follow up, you have to drive different streams, you have to organize and coordinate workshops, deliveries, and all these things. So there was already the project and the program management component there embedded into the role. But at some point in time, I was really curious now to, instead of going to this like, oh, let me take your problem, I'll try to think here of interesting solutions, I'll bring it back to you, you implement, we can implement together, and then we move on. I wanted to see the whole cycle. I was really interested and curious to see, how do we discuss requirements? What are the problems that we actually want to solve? How can we, just nail down the classes of problems to one tiny problem and then expand to the requirements, iterate a little bit more, have the product out there, and then look how the product evolves, right? So like this really end-to-end capability. That was one of the main motivations that actually led me to look more for the program management role here. And that's one of the main motivators that made my career my career change.
Okay. Thanks, Jordan. There's one question here. Let me just bring this on the screen so everyone can see it from Perseros. Jordan, as a PhD holder in the industrial field, would you pursue the degree again? As a master student with 2 papers in good conferences in the CV field, I'm deciding between academic and industrial path and would appreciate your insights.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Perseros. Yes, nice to meet you. I hear you totally. And I can only say I've been there. Um, I've been there. So it's this is a complicated question because it's not just like I do PhD now and I did a PhD 5 or 10 years ago, and then the recommendation would be the same because the environment changed a lot, right? And my personal opinion is that when I did my PhD or when I decided I want to go a PhD, I really liked research. I was motivated by the rigorous cycles of research methodology, right? So when you are publishing a paper, it's not just you have a nice design or you have a nice idea and then you created a process, but you have to evaluate thoroughly. You have to think about demographics. You have to think about your users. You have to think about like how to get the data, how to generate insights of the data, and now how, what are the outcomes, what are the policies, what is the contribution to the research literature and to the world that you want to do, right? So that was my main motivation. And I remember when I was back there, like going back in time, I a lot of innovation and interesting projects, they were coming from the academia, right? So I was working in a European Union research project in which it was like the beginning of data streaming. I remember some folks in Sweden, they were even building innovative prototypical types on how to read an SQL-like language to read streaming data. So I was really excited about, wow, there is a whole new world out there, and I want to employ tools, I want to employ methodologies, I want to do this because I didn't see that maybe outside academia would face the same. Few years later, then with several of, I think some people call hyperscalers. You look at, Netflix, you look at Google, you look at all these companies. They were doing amazing things, right? So if you want to talk about scalability, you go to Google and you live and you code and you work in a project, you're going to see really how scalability works in practice. So I believe a little bit the this kind of motivation that I had in the past, I don't know if that would be valid today as well, because a lot of big companies, they are doing interesting stuff in the research world. But um, I think I would do again a PhD. Maybe not so much from like the different classes of problems that you can find and what motivates you, because it has to be there. Otherwise, you're not going to survive that many years and writing a thesis with very demanding professors. But the PhD, in my opinion, gives you unique skills that you can get everywhere else, but it's a crash course. It's like it's a dip in the cold water of specifically analytical thinking, right? Specifically preparing you to go really in depth on understanding the root causes of a problem. Because if you don't do that, your colleagues in conferences or your professor, they are going to do that work for you. And it's going to be more time consuming. They want to go to really the point that makes the change. And finally, I think like as a third characteristic, it was during my PhD that I learned how to write in English, and I learned how to write uh, technical documents, a thesis, a paper, an email, an article, like what is the structure, what it really matters, when you go to the point, how to divide your text and be convey the message effectively. So just a recap, I think I would do it again because in the research area you always find interesting topics to work on, and I would do it again because now I know that for me a lot of learnings from let's say less technical aspects of the PhD, they were super fundamental for me and in my career as well.
Cool. Thanks. Perseros, if you have any follow-up question, or feel free to ask. Next question is and I just want to. This is a very no, I would not say difficult, but is most probably a topic that if you ask 100 people working at Google today or people who work at Google in the past, they will definitely come up with different answers. So I think it's very personal
Mhm.
because it depends on the individual, but it's also in general something that depends on the team and the people you're working with. And the question is, what do you believe are the most challenging and most rewarding aspects of being a program manager at Google?
Mhm. That is a very interesting question. Um, so I think regardless of the position, regardless of being a program manager, um, I believe the greatest thing to work in Google is the diversity that that people has, right? And here it's like it's not it has so many dimensions. It's multicultural, it's multi-language, it's people from the whole world living in maybe another place. Like I am Brazilian, I live in Switzerland, I work in Google there, right? And there are people from the whole world, in addition to Switzerland, also working in Google. And literally people from the whole world, right? And I think this is great because you learn so much from other cultures. There are so many tweaks. There are so many particularities from the different types of people coming from these countries. So the cultural is already like the culture, the multicultural is already like the first interesting thing and the first challenge. The language, right? I'm not native in English, and the way I communicate in English, might be totally different than maybe a native speaker, right? Some expressions. Sometimes we want to translate jokes. Sometimes we want to talk about things that are really common to our culture. Like in Brazil, there is a lot of care for football or soccer, depending on if you follow American English or the British English. And in some other cultures, football is actually, yeah, all right, I heard about it, but it's not so much for me, right? And all of that together made me reflect throughout the years, even when I left Brazil. And now, not just working in Google. When I left Brazil, I lived in Germany, I lived in the Netherlands, now I live in Switzerland. I have a lot of contact with Italian people. And I realized that the different cultural traits, they require you to be flexible and not just your communication style, right? So this sounds very obvious, but communication goes beyond the language you speak or the words you use. It also, I think it belongs to the way, the tone of your voice, the way you communicate. Some cultures, for example, cannot tolerate a direct conversation, just cannot. Some cultures actually require you to be direct and not impolite, but very direct, right? So the communication and the cultural aspects, for me, they are like one of the most beautiful things that exist. They raise the bar for yourself, and they are a challenge as well because it's a continuous learning. We don't have maybe one whole lifetime, unless you grow up with maybe some family in the diplomacy, that you have to live every 4 years in a different country. Then you are a little bit ahead because you have experienced several countries through your upbringing. But apart of that, you have to actually learn also with your mistakes on how you communicate, how you express yourself at work, and maybe also in small talks, right? So this is like, for me, regardless of my position, and within Google, one of the most beautiful aspects that I can think of.
I'm not sure I you meant that this is also the most challenging, but if it's not, what is the most challenging part of
Mhm.
working at Google, or being a program manager at Google, at least?
Right. So again, for me, as a program manager, you have, so most of your job is also communications, very strong, right? You have to connect
Okay.
with people, you have to coordinate, you have to communicate. So this is like
Okay.
a
So it's
very
also a
strong,
challenge for you. Okay.
strong part, yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
if I also can add a little bit of challenges, is maybe if you think outside, um, or depending on the company work,
Mhm.
some people, and I remember my previous my previous employer, you kind of choose, oh, we are working here as a program manager, let me try to organize our delivery and create our roadmap. For this, I'm going to choose Kanban, or maybe I'm going to choose Scrum, and then you go with it, right? You implement the team goals, and And what is interesting is in Google is actually you have a, it's like Batman, you have a tool belt with all these methodologies, all the agile methodologies, maybe iterative methodologies, and maybe even some waterfall methodologies. And I think what is interesting and challenging is like what is going to resonate the best with the team that you are working with, because it's not one size fits all. So every new project, every new team, you are going to change completely your work style, the methodology you want to implement, the process you are going to propose. And this is like challenging because you have to constantly build and in parallel experience with all of them, just to be able to operate at your, just to be able to perform, like perform in a very quick pace with all the methodologies that you should know and that you should bring experience from. So this is another thing that I can think about. So that the dynamism of the company allows you to choose one, like each of these for all the projects that you are running in parallel, and maybe also mix and match, see what is better, because with time then you start to understand what are the most important trade-offs and what are the most interesting techniques that you bring from one methodology to another, from one process to another. So I think I would add that as a challenge as well, because if you are working with, depending on where you're coming from, if you are working with a specific methodology, if you are using, I don't know, Scrum for a few years, well, just like get used to the fact that you might have to revisit all your tool belts and put some other processes there.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's I was used to say not every project is a nail. You can't hammer every single project. Sometimes you need screws, sometimes you need
Yeah,
screwdriver, some other time you need a different tool. You can't just hammer all of them, because hammer worked once, it doesn't mean it's going to work every single time, right?
yeah, that is
So
really really clever. Right now I
yeah.
started getting why you have Yoda in your name.
Okay, Manuel, as Manuel just made a comment, and with the question is about the communication point, right? I've always thought that the theater course can help for communication. What do you think?
I
The only point is of the time, of course, everything is time constraint. But yeah, Jordan, I have an opinion on this topic, but you can go first,
okay,
please.
thank you. I completely agree with you, Manuel. Definitely, it will help because some of the people, sometimes you have to do a presentation, you have to meet with people in a room that are, different levels, different seniorities, maybe few dozens of people. Some people feel nervous just to speak out to so many other, to a large audience. So I think going to a theater, it's going to allow you to get out of your comfort zone and be exposed, right? And I think that's a really valid experience. If before I just pass over to Marco again, and it's about communication. Um, in addition to the theater course, or maybe I leave it for later, because I have a very good book that I would like to talk about communication methods and presentations.
Yeah, yeah. I told Jordan that he has to come prepared with at least one book, if not more, to suggest. Otherwise, I would not have invited him. So he came
Yes,
prepared. That's good.
yes,
Uh,
I did my
no,
homework.
I wanted to say something very similar to what you said. In general, for me, communication is about getting the message to the recipient. It's not about, for me personally, and I know that others have different opinion. It's not about having the perfect pronunciation. It's not about having the perfect grammar. Is about having good enough pronunciation and good enough grammar that will allow me to express the message and to communicate with the other person. And the 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 big problem here is that sometimes I might not feel comfortable speaking up, as Jordan said, right? Because maybe I don't feel I have something important enough to say, or I don't think what I want to say is maybe it could be wrong, right? I mean, it's not perfect, or in some other case, I just don't want to speak up in front of a lot of people.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that the theater part will help a lot people just become more uh, building more self confidence and helping them just remove some of these barriers. Because I work with a lot of people in the past. They were very smart, very clever. They always had good points, but they very rarely speak up.
Mm.
You could always see them sending feedback afterwards, or just maybe reaching out to people and giving their feedback individually, which is all fine, but was a little bit of a pity because they could have shared that great feedback with everyone, not just with that individual, right? So having a little bit of self-confidence is important here to be able to actually communicate with the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something that I like a lot to hear, like not really being perfect, right? Maybe you don't have the perfect message, but you go out there and you are going to communicate what you know. Maybe you're going to hear like some tough feedback and say, okay, I tried my best. It's not the day, it's not my time. And stand up again and go to the next one and try over. I think because if you wait for something to be perfect, then the chances that you can speak up, they are going to be so small. So I liked a lot what you said, Marco, from this
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. One thing that is a little bit, it's not exactly on topic here, but it's about communication because Jordan, now we are having this in English, but in the past, the first few instances of this stream were in Italian, and then we had discussion: shall we move to English or keep the Italian? And some people expressed some concern that English was a little bit more difficult. I fully understand, and I hope that this will help some people. But fundamentally, I remember that for me, when I start working in an international environment, especially when I was in a room with some native speakers, especially with Americans, I felt a little bit more shy and I didn't speak up a lot, right? Because I didn't want to embarrass myself with my English. And I remember then I had very good relationship with some US colleagues, and this came up, and this person from US told me, oh, you know how many languages we speak in the US? um, the majority speak one language. If you go in the south, they speak also Spanish, right? Because they are very close to Mexico. But the majority of the Americans just speak one language. And so your English, that's what they said, your English, considering is a second language, is maybe the third language you speak, it would be an achievement for 80% of the population in the United States. And I have to say that this center made me feel much more comfortable with my English. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. And also the different types of Englishes, right? So we think like American English, and some people in the US have very clear English. I don't know if you ever worked with folks from Scotland, for example, but I got nervous. you
I,
know,
yeah, I think you have to get used to. That
yeah,
is true
yeah,
also for different parts of America, right? And a person from New York and the person from San Francisco, uh,
yeah,
they speak a very different American English. Yeah, so
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
okay. So cool. Let me see if there is no more questions. So a lot of the people that are here in the audience or they're just following they will just watch the recording on YouTube are either people that just completed their degree or they're close to complete their degree. And so um, what would you recommend? What would you suggest to someone who is maybe finishing their degree or close to, and they want to become a program manager at Google, or I mean
Mhm.
Google or other tech companies, right? They want to become a project or program manager in a tech company, let's say.
Absolutely. That's a very good question as well. I so there are three things that, in my opinion, would be relevant. Um, Something that is the first thing is learn how to be, and I was even by accident. It is true, by accident. I was speaking with Marco recently about this, but being data driven, right? Being curious to justify your acts, your course of actions based on data. It's not just about gut feeling. I want to do this because this programming language is better, or this architecture is nicer, or because I think this way we are going to have less code. Measure things and bring the measurements, your insights to it to justify your ideas. You know, and I think in I think everywhere this would be extremely valuable because you back up your decisions. It just shows it's not a matter of gut feeling. And when you start working with this, it's not just like measuring design decisions, but you're also will learn how you are going to measure the efficiency of something that you design. Or maybe you are also going to measure the contribution of a role that you have in a company, and you're going to put that on your CV, right? So being data driven for me is super important. It's super special. And it's not just technical people, it's making you be aware and making you justify better your approaches. So I think this would be like, for me, a number one. Um, a number two is a curious one and something that I also have been reflecting recently and looking into it. It's if you're leaving the university, the difficulty there is like what can I put in my CV? What are going to be the aspects that I want to showcase? So here my recommendation that I to some extent thought to myself throughout my career is like build your portfolio. If you are working with software, recently I even helped I coach somebody with this specific topic. Like if you are building software, if you are developing software, publish your software in GitHub. You cannot publish the software you work. Oh, sorry. Well, whatever. I'm just mentioning something here, but whatever code you wanna leave it out there, whenever whatever publishing platform you have out there. But if you don't have any idea, if you cannot publish the code of your work, then you can actually maybe build a website for fun, or actually do an implementation for fun and just publish for like your own flavor of quicksort. Or maybe you want to implement a chess game in JavaScript, or maybe you want to create just like a friend of mine who created, they play a game that I think here in Switzerland is very popular. I don't know if in Italy as well, but it's like the log, the tree log, and then you have a lot of nails, and then with a hammer, people around the log, they start hammering just once, and you achieve your goal when by one slam the nail goes completely to the bottom. It's a very Swiss game. You don't know that? Okay, yeah. But he built.
Never played the game. Maybe I'm just not
Yeah, no, I didn't know that either. He was
okay.
explaining to me. Yeah, but if you go up in the Utelberg for the people who live in Switzerland and in Zurich,
Yeah.
and that there is the Uto something hotel. Outside there is a big wood log, and if you see on the top, there are a lot of nails, and that's the result of that game.
Okay.
But I deviated a lot just to come back and say he built the website, like really simple website with all the backend integrated into it in the evenings, in the weekend, uh, to organize the championship of this game from his city, right? And I'm just mentioning that because this idea he could have organized with a spreadsheet, but he decided actually to find an interesting way, and I started to showcase his development skills, right? So what I want to say here is like build your portfolio of things that you can showcase to the world you can do, right? And then you are going to have much more material if you're going to use in an interview or if you are going to publish in any platform like LinkedIn, whatever, right? And this would be my second um, tip, right? And I think that the third one it's much more subtle. So the third one is like think how can you actually add value by helping others to create value in their work, right? So if you and most of the automation work will fall into this category, right? If you want somebody to be maybe more productive, you'll set up continuous integration pipeline. If maybe your APIs at work they do not have a proper documentation, you set up, not just the documentation of the web of the APIs. We are going to develop a specific portal to allow for interactive use of the documentation. So how can you actually bring value? And I'm giving a lot of examples on the tech world because I did computer science, so that's like what I'm used to think about. So that's kind of the value that I believe you could be adding. And but you can generalize to it like how can you put servant leadership in practice to a certain extreme that you help others to accomplish the best of their work.
Okay. Thanks. Very insightful.
Yeah.
Um, there's one topic we often discuss here, which is program and project management certification. I by just checking on your LinkedIn profile, I noticed that I didn't know before that you are a PMI-ACP, so the Agile certification, right?
Yeah.
You are a PMI-ACP. I'm not very familiar with the certification. I mean, I know it's about Agile, but for instance, I don't know how much time does it take to just get it, how difficult is the exam. But
Mhm.
in general, as we discussed very often, certification,
Mhm.
would you recommend this certification to the people here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I didn't do that many certifications. I and I love doing that one, and for one specific reason. A few years ago, I was a little bit like looking to the fact that everybody was talking about agile, and agile became even a synonym for faster delivery or for being more focused or working better with the teams. And I started looking to the agile uh, terms and guidelines and concepts, and I didn't find this kind of synonym, so agile just triggered me. And then I started studying agile. And this certification in particular is awesome because what they did is that the ACP stands for Agile Certified Practitioner. And this certification from PMI, because PMI is very famous for the PMP, right? And
Yeah,
that's
I am a PMP older, and we discuss very often the PMP and other certification. Yeah,
exactly. And PMP is really complex. The PMBOK is big. You have to study, you have to have experience, and so on. And it was very much about program management. I think it's not just
project management,
project. Okay,
project
project
management.
to a next to several areas. For the PMI, what I like is that they said, okay, PMP exists. It's about a little bit waterfall, a little bit
Hmm.
iterative, which was the next level of it. But now let's take all the agile methodologies, let's cluster them together, and you are going to study all of them under the PMI ACP umbrella. And I love that because sometimes I used to ask myself, what is the relationship between Kanban and Scrum? Or maybe Lean. And during the certification and going through it and studying, I understood the added value of Agile certifications. And I understood like that all these certifications, they were actually siblings in this tree. They were all part of the Agile world, about the Agile. They were different Agile methodologies. And you would have to pick each of them depending on your context. So that kind of thought was really helpful for me, at least. So I would recommend anybody to go through that certification. I don't think it's like the PMP that you take. I don't know how long it took you, Marco, but I think this one would take 6 months, maybe between 6 and
Okay.
1 year.
I don't remember, but I believe it's doable to take the PMP in 6 months. Of course, if you have experience already.
Yeah,
But yeah, not
yeah.
starting from scratch. I mean, I don't think it's even possible because one of the prerequisite of the PMP is that you have, I don't remember how many hours of project management experience. Right.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. They
There is
asked
there is
that as well. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, there is a prerequisite. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I can just come back quickly on
Yeah,
this topic,
sure.
another thing that was interesting for me studying this PMI ACP certification was actually to realize that several companies out there, they were mixing, for example, the role of product manager or program manager with some roles for agile methodology. So I remember some time ago that I was saying we look for product owners. And product owner is actually a coin term from the Scrum methodology. So if you're going to apply to a job position of product owner, what does that imply? Does that imply that you have to learn already Scrum? Or maybe people are looking for a product or a program manager, and then you have also your freedom to choose the agile methodology that you prefer, right? So I think this certification actually helped me to understand there is a role of a product or of a program manager, and you can use any kind of methodology, Scrum inclusive, and you can also play the role of a product owner, right? So this kind of a relationships, they brought organization to my mind.
Yeah. Uh, Manuel is asking, what is the best way to prepare for a PMI PMP exam? Does it make sense to buy an online course? If so, do you have any to recommend? So my certification, I think, was back in 2000 and something, single digit. I don't remember. I should double check.
At
Six,
least the
seven, eight.
year 2000.
Some. It was in 2000. Yes, yes, yes. It's already in this century. But I beginning of this century. So I remember the way I prepared was to take some. I used some books that were actually targets to the PMP, and it was very useful. I don't recall the name of the book, and I'm also pretty sure that now it doesn't exist anymore, or it's completely outdated, considering how many years passed since when I took the certification. But in general, what I found useful is that, and maybe that's also true for training. Um, the material, the PM book, is just the theory, and the entire exam is focused on solving specific situations. So now either you make the connection between the theory and how to solve the situation, or those additional books or those training might help you with concrete example, bridging this gap. The PMBOK will not give you the specific example. At least this was the very old version I had back in the days. I remember that recently I saw he was here. I don't know if Joe Kucha is still here, but he mentioned in the last live that he recently took the PMP. So, um, and actually, I promise that maybe we will have a session with him where he will actually share his experience and some best practices. So definitely, Joe, if you're still here, feel free to correct anything I said. Most probably you have much more up to date information at this point. I don't know, Jordan, if you want to add anything specifically on here, or maybe share your experience with ACP.
Yeah, it was very similar to what you did. I had the book, so not now. I'll talk about the books later. But I had the book for the certification preparation, and it was the theory, as you said. And then for that one, if I remember correctly, I actually went to one of these online courses because they give you a lot of prompts, a lot of questions, so you can prepare. So I think it's going to be less impactful in the moment of the exam. You're going to do it better. But I remember the questions of these online platforms, they were not so good. I remember that I did my Java certification a few years ago, and there it was really worthy to have the online courses. It even complemented the theoretical material, so you could be much more prepared and even have a better programming attitude in Java just by going through question by question, clarifying some concepts that maybe you didn't think about.
Okay, thanks. Uh, Yeah, I see there is a lot of interest about PMP. I believe there are few people here preparing for the PMP. I need to refresh, as I said. I took it. I'm still involved into the PMI discussions, but I haven't looked at the last version of the PMBOK. So I'll most probably I'll need some. I'll find someone who's willing to uh, share their experience with this. Cool. Let's see. Another topic we discuss is mentoring. So what is your position when it comes to mentoring? Do you have a mentor? Are you a mentor? Uh,
Yeah, so it's a very, at least for me, I have been hearing a lot close to colleagues and friends recently, and for me, it's a hot topic recently. And recently, I also learned the difference between mentors and coaches, right? Because it's not a synonym. In my understanding, a mentor, just to clarify, when I talk about a mentor is going to help you with a very specific skill, programming in Python, learning Panda, working with Scrum, you know, communication skills, something like this. And a coach, I think it's going to be a more broader, as far as I understood, a more broader scope in the sense I want to switch my career, I want to switch jobs, I want to get a management position, something like this. And I'm personally a fan of all of this. I have mentors, and not just one, and I have coaches, and also not just one. And the greatest added value for me personally is that I have different perspectives. I hear different perspectives from people that don't necessarily need to be more senior or junior than me. It's just a different perspective because you are generally biased, right, through your own thoughts. Um, and hearing somebody to talk about the same topics as you might be an eye opener. So I'm very, very much in favor of this. And if you don't you don't necessarily need to go and have I don't know, start with a mentor that you start paying immediately, maybe a friend, an accountant, an accountable partner, like share accountability. Hey, let's you and I, let's work together here. We are going to meet every 2 weeks. I'm going to talk my issues. You're going to talk about your issues. Um, you know, let's brainstorm career changes. You can start this way, because then you are going slightly away from your comfort zone. You're going to go to hear different opinions, and all of that will definitely help the the progressive change. That's like my view. I don't know, Marco, if you how you worked with this before. I don't think we discussed too much about this.
No, no, but we have an entire live session about mentoring,
Uh-huh.
so I just don't want to replay my uh, opinion on mentoring. I am a strong believer in mentoring, both as a mentee and as a mentor, and there is never something like a wrong moment to have a mentor. Um, no, in general, I believe that's one of the key part of your career progression is having someone who can help
Mm-hmm.
uh, with difficult moments of your career or help with difficult decisions. Sometimes you want to just switch role. Sometimes you want to change company. Um, all those decision comes with the risk attached, right? I can change company and then suddenly the company goes bankruptcy, or I change role and suddenly I realize I don't like it or I'm not good at it, right? And so there are always risks, and it's important that you have someone to discuss and get advices on those decisions, hear different opinions that will just allow you to have a more informed decision at that.
Yeah, and I also did. It was a very interesting experience to me. For me to be a mentor of somebody who had a degree in architecture, was working with something not related to architecture or any branch of the computer science, and wanted to get into computer science. So that was very. The person said, "Hey, you wanna? Can you help me?" And I said, well, if you want to help, of course I can help. Let's chat. Let's brainstorm together. I think almost after 1 year, that person actually had landed his first job in as a front end developer, right? So it was very nice. It was great because the person was bringing me challenges, and I was challenging myself as well. So it was really, really interesting, really interesting for me. Something went into the direction of what I told earlier about, you know, creating your portfolio, creating your own brand, making own your career and the added value that you can bring, and going through all these kind of steps. He managed to get there, and that was great. It was a great satisfaction, especially also for him who made this change. Recently, what I also want to say about this is like it's great to have mentors and coaches, and there are some people that are certified, and it's very interesting to pay attention on those people because they have a specific process and a methodology on how to coach. So I always like to try different experiences to see how I'm going to stick better with methodology without, how I'm going to, charter this territory that maybe I don't know how to do.
Yeah. Um, let's bring this up. Andrea is asking, is it not so common to have mentors in Italy, or am I wrong? Um, I I don't know. I have to be honest. In my experience, I didn't have a lot of mentors back in the day when I was in Italy. Um, but maybe it's just a side effect of the companies I work for or the environment I was in. Um, I don't see why it should not work. I don't see why it should not be a cultural thing. Uh, but Andrea, most probably you're right. I haven't heard of a lot of mentoring cases in Italy. At least in my experience, I didn't have many.
And by the way, Andrea, go out. I don't know, your question didn't lead this way for me, but if you are thinking about mentoring, reach out to the people, go out there. And, I don't know if you are working recently in some specific company, but try out, because um, it took me few iterations and few people until I understood the added value that it brought. But you really have to get the process started. So I don't know if it's common or not in Italy, but try to make it common for you, because I'm sure it's gonna help.
Cool. So, Jordan, how do you keep learning? How do you keep improving your skills? What is your secret sauce?
No secret sauce. Asking I keep asking myself things like, what are the topics in my mind that are not clear to me? What are different courses that can actually enhance my work or can make my work better? Like, I forgot the username here who was here. It was Manuel B91 asking about the theatre course, right? So I try to think from this perspective. Theatre doesn't have anything like in on a first at a first glance. It's not a specific requirement for somebody to become a program manager, but maybe the traits of the skills you will learn in a theatre course would be directly applicable, will be transferable skills. So I try to take this perspective, and that's why I actually ended up doing the PMI-ACP, because that thing was in this way back then not at all something that it was in my daily life. I was doing software engineering in Java. I was working with APIs in ESBs and API management platforms, and the methodology being a program manager was not what I was thinking at that time. But then I wanted to learn more, just to understand like why people were talking so much about Agile, and I wanted to study. Now, recently, I discovered a very interesting course for the folks who live here in Switzerland. I don't know if you heard the term CAS. It's a Certified of Advanced Studies, and it's something really typical in Switzerland. It's like a program, an extension course that you would do in universities. And this program talks about big data and machine learning and artificial intelligence. So, and by the way, the name of the course is something like this: big data and artificial intelligence for managers. And just a disclaimer, I'm not a manager myself, but the for managers part is very interesting because they are not teaching you the specifics of coding, like using a specific Python library. You learn a little bit that, but it's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is learning the categories of problems, the classes of problems that exist, and the types of machine learning models that you can apply to resolve those models, right? So this kind of thing is also, again, for me interesting because it's a mind opener. I want to think more into, I don't want just to create in a weekend a supervised machine learning model. I really want to understand how can actually nowadays companies bring value into the world. So currently, I'm doing this CAS and I'm very satisfied. It has a very, for the ones who are interested, it has a very good um, um, diversity. So there are people from business, there are people from the technical side, and the most fascinating thing is that the course is done for business decision makers to talk the tech talk. And I'm not coming from business background, but I'm also there because I want to understand what is not understandable for business decision makers. What are their questions, and what are they trying to say that they don't get it? Because then I'll also learn how to speak their language, right? So that's it. I look for courses that I think they are going to just, add value to what I do from a completely different perspective. And in this one, in this specific, I'm doing the CAS, which is in English, by the way, by the University of St. Gallen. It's great.
Cool. Uh, any book? Any book or other
Ah, yes.
training you would? I guess that's part of how you keep learning, right? So, what are your favorite book?
Yeah. So I have two books that I have the name, and I have a third book that I don't have the name, but I will explain what it's about. I will start with this one. When I was in consulting, and by the way, I'm a big fan of communication, as you see, because communication will become again a topic now. I was working as a tech consultant. And as a tech consultant, it's very important. As a consultant in general, it's very important that you know how to communicate things. Now, what is the most effective way for most of the people to communicate things out there? I don't know about your experience, but I've seen a lot, and I prefer to have a big whiteboard that I can take a marker and we can start drawing things, concepts, architectures, whatever it is. But it's almost like this feeling that you want to put something like written. So, one book that I researched a lot was teaching, and I'm not a good drawer, but it was teaching how you can make easy, meaningful sketches on a paper. Like, how do you design a human being, which is not just a smiley face? Or how you draw, let's say, how do you convey a message through some uh, basic sketches and drawers? And I felt this was really great, because then you have a increased power of expression. So this is the nameless book, and there are several out there. If you look in
I
Amazon, it's amazing.
I want the link because I'm a very visual person, and any if you have any in-person meeting with me, I can promise that we will end up on a whiteboard drawing stuff, but my drawings are really ugly. So you can't, I mean, I can't draw anything which is not an arrow or a square or a circle. And so if there is a book explaining me how to do better, I want that book.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it does explain, and you
Okay.
fascinate yourself how you can actually improve, because I was in that condition as well. I didn't go through much on that book, but I think I did just a minor part. The other parts I did with some family members who were learning how to draw Peppa Pig for children. Great accomplishment for me as well. But apart of those books, there are two that I really like. So the one, it was the spoiler already, the PMI-ACP book,
Mhm.
the preparation exam book. Even if you are not going to do the exam, read that book, because that's all about value-driven delivery. Like, how do you structure yourself to deliver projects, especially in tech, using agile methodologies, but that they are going to deliver value as fast as possible and more responsibly as possible? And there are several tools, like how do you estimate stuff with engineers? How do you have different types of tools to have not estimations from your own mind, but how can you do that collectively? How do you create roadmaps? When is the best moment to take decisions? So all these kind of minor things that when you put together, you are going to have a great tool belt. Great book, definitely recommend. And the other one was, and here it for me it was a game changer book to make presentations. It's called Resonate. So I forgot the author, but if you put Resonate, it has a yellow cover, and the author is American, but maybe has some Spanish, Nancy something, some Spanish names. And there, she's great. She teaches about how you convey presentations that will make an impact. So you're going to review techniques from Hollywood. You're going to review like how you create the whole non-visual part for a presentation. Like you choose just 3 topics for a presentation, and then you research your audience, and you are going to design from these 3 topics. There's a specific methodology that you're going to design the message you want to convey to the target audience. Then you're going to take care about the tone that you're going to use. Then you're going to study in the book how you create storylines, so storytelling mechanisms. And then finally, how you take all of that and you put into the visuals, and visuals that cannot be disruptive. So not much text, because people are hearing you. The things that are displayed there, they are just to complement what you are hearing. It should not distract you, your audience, from what you're seeing. So it's a great book because it brings elements that nobody has the time to think if you're not coming really from the social science, or if you didn't have experience maybe with marketing. But if you want to do impactful presentation, that's the book.
Okay, I'll ask you for the links and the exact names because
Yeah,
I'm curious.
yeah. This
Uh,
one you can already purchase,
okay,
purchase and get it, because that's going to change how you think about presentations.
okay. I'm curious. Let me just do a quick time check. I think we have still 10 minutes. Uh, One of the last question I have here is, how do you manage your work-life balance?
Ah,
Because I mean, it's working. I mean, working for a U.S. company, especially a company based in the Bay Area, it's not easy, right? There is a time zone difference. Um in addition to that, being in a program manager role might be stressful. So, how do you actually combine having a meaningful career and an happy life?
that is and I just have 10 we just have 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, I'll give you five because I see there are one more question. So you can't
Yeah,
spend
no,
more than.
absolutely. This is like the key question, right? So we are, it's a short blanket. We have families, we have our interests, we have our health, we have work, we have, you name it. So basically, something that is great at Google is that Marvel, in one of the movies of Marvel, says with great powers it comes great responsibilities. And what I'm going to say, I think it's very similar to that. I think working Google, you have a lot of flexibility, and it's really up to you to develop the maturity you need to understand how you are going to manage your agenda. And sometimes you have meetings with the US or maybe other regions towards the east side of the world. So it's going to be early mornings or late evenings, you know, because that's the nature of the company, how we operate. So basically, here it's really up to you. I try to create the balance that suits best for me. I try to have flexible working hours, because maybe in some part of my day I need to have an external commitment, and I want to have the flexibility to go there. Maybe for the people who have children, they have to attend some events in the kindergarten, in the school, but maybe you have some time to work in the evenings. So I love when there is flexibility, because I think understanding your working routine is very particular. It's really up to you to understand how you manage your own life, and you are the best person to answer that. So it requires also you, me, all of us, to have the maturity to understand how we are going to create this in such a way that will not lead you to maybe get sick or have or maybe just doing too much. It's always like this kind of a short blanket. You have to manage wisely. You have to know your limits. You have to know to what extent you are going to invest into one specific area of your life, and so on. So what I just want to say is that there is a lot of flexibility. It requires our personal responsibility in how we are going to manage our agenda and our calendars.
Yeah, yeah. I think I agree. What you said is more difficult because you have to manage it right in an active
Mhm.
way. And what I always say is flexibility is a two-way street, right? It's a two-way street. It's not a one-way. If the employer is asking the employee to be flexible and accommodate meeting in the evening and over the weekend, but when the employee needs to go to the, I don't know, to the daycare party at 3 p.m., they say, oh no, come on, 3 p.m. it's work time, right? You're not allowed to go. It doesn't work. It's true the other way around as well. I've seen people that pretended to have all their flexibility as an employee, but when they were asked, okay, unfortunately, we have to accommodate 5 time zone, and you have to make it a little bit late for this time, they said, oh no, no, that's outside of my working times, right? I will never do it. So it's important that it's a two ways street, and it's important that you get flexibility, but you also provide flexibility.
Mhm.
It it's not one to one, but I think it's the approach, right? Maybe I get 10 times flexibility and I give only one because only once was needed. But it's important that this is the approach, right? When it comes to flexibility. Uh, we're a few minutes left. Let me take the last question from Manuel. Manuel asked, I have a last question. Curiosity. One bean for two birds. How long do you sleep at night? Time management. Uh, Jordan, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I don't have a specific number, but I am a person that I cannot like some people can sleep 5 hours, 6 hours. I'm not really this type of person. So it varies a lot throughout the week because also of personal commitments. But I need to have my decent amount of hours because in the next day I cannot really operate. And it's like, it's hard because it's a constant juggle, right? You're going to go to work, you're going to exercise yourself, you have to do your personal life, you have family, you have whatever it is. And it's like trying
Yeah.
put the to put the puzzle together. And I personally try to cut on things that don't add anything to me, that are like irrelevant. So then I can have a few more minutes of sleep instead of, I personally chose instead of TV, for example.
For me, I try 8 hours is my target. I One thing that I try is to not use an alarm in the morning. So let my body wake up when I am completely rested. I can't do that every single day. Some days I have early commitment in the morning and I have to wake up. But what I discover is that if I go to sleep early enough, so before midnight, let's say, my body wake up by 7:30 a.m. or 8 p.m. at the latest, which except for some personal commitment like bringing my daughter to the daycare. Except for that, works for the majority of my work related commitments. So I I really try hard to sleep 8 hours, but I also try hard to let my body decide how many hours. Uh, for instance, last night I slept 6 hours. I just wake up. I just woke up this morning after 6 hours of sleep, and it was like something like six something a.m. And I was rested. I said, okay, it's time to do something else. And I woke up, and it happened a few weeks ago that I slept for 10 hours. Maybe my body needed a little bit more that day, but I believe sleep is one of the pillars of the well-being. So sleeping, diet, physical exercise,
Hmm.
and getting enough sun or outside time are for me the four pillars of well-being, and I try to do enough of all four. And if I do it, I feel much better. I can see the difference. I mean, if there are weeks that for one reason or the other I'm too busy and I'm not sleeping enough, or I don't have time to stay outside a little bit, or I don't have time to do physical exercise, my energy goes
Mm,
down to 50%. I am
yeah.
really not as productive as if I do all those things.
Yeah, plus one to that also from me. Something curious that I started to do recently is that in addition to also putting the alarm clock to wake up, I put the alarm clock to go to bed because it's really easy to lose time. And when you're looking to it, it's midnight already. So I try to go to bed earlier. I That's a nice practice I started doing.
Hmm. Interesting, interesting.
No.
Okay, I think we are at time, and we don't have any more question. Uh, Thanks everyone as usual. Thanks a lot, Jordan, for your time. And I hope you enjoy the chat. I did. And so
Yeah.
everyone have a great night. Go to sleep early and get the amount of sleep you need. And see you next Monday.
Yeah, it was great to be here. By the way, it was great to hear from to have this chat and hear the questions. Just want to say that if anybody wants to follow up with me 101, my LinkedIn is available. Just connect. Let's have a chat. I'm really open for that. So thanks a
Th-
lot, and thanks Marco
th-
for the invitation as well.
Thanks,
It was
Jordan.
fun. Okay, have a good
Have a great
evening.
night. Bye.
Bye, everybody.